Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is Jones. Report is for the 30th of March. Some people have been calling this catastrophic month with all the selling, blah, blah. This is not bad. It's been very orderly, easily to predicted. I mean, from the DOC spread that we first had, right here, you've had steel above. You almost had a reset here, but we were in continuation mode, and we never got orange dipping below red or green. Okay, there's no buy in that configuration. So as we were going, it's a matter of, okay, you below 50%, you're short on a daily permanently at that particular point until it does better. When you get down to the zeros, you start evaluating, do I have any dips? We had one coming down here when we got closer. It was like, okay, we were hovering right around the 23% at the turn up of it. And it's like, okay, if you're able to stay above 23%, you can go long. But if not, once below it, stay there. And that was exactly what we were talking about a couple days back. Nothing's changed. And sure enough, the market dove even further. The slight dip down, okay, that's going to be a slight bullish partially, but overall the trend's not going to change here. Still pushing back up would certainly create a little bit more of an ability of it to hold the little pop. But again, within any broader short, all you're doing is covering back some of this big decline. Now, from a NASDAQ standpoint, where we're looking at is much weaker. So that's significant. And you can see this beautiful stays right in between there. It's still dipped below the 7. So, you're going to have pops within that. That's just the way it is. You've got your dip below the red line here. So we look for, continuation of that orange going lower would definitely be a turnaround. Now, of course, we're at that 24. That's a potential pop for the NASDAQ. Well, the NASDAQ is able to hold on to it a little bit better. That'll improve the S&P. It might be enough to get you back up, towards the 23% on that case. So, but is the war ending? No. Is it expanding? It looks like it. So that's risk on. And from that standpoint, oil climbing. The bigger disaster is unless traffic starts moving through there, you're already hearing the cries about fertilizers. Now, of course, a lot of this is going to impact more of Asia and Europe because, as we were pointing out, the Venezuela oil coming into the U.S. is going to provide the cushion. But will countries start getting into limiting exports of various things? Uh, you know, the ripple for this is down the road, and like we talked about, it's right around election time. So, interesting choice of not getting this done in time. And of course, pointed out the negative this is for the euro, and the fact that they consider this anti-Trump thing has been so strong a narrative with the tariffs and that euro is still way artificially higher than it should be, and even at the 114 range here, uh, incredible premium for nothing. Literally, but it is what it is. And now gold, of course, is going to be able to start its run because you can see the built-in inflation in this is already set in stone, and that return is not going to be surprising, and it's going to be significant. You're not quite seeing much from Bitcoin and those kind of things. We can see that from the chart there. You had a brief moment where things started to look fairly decent, and then boom, right here we ended up with the spread differential, and yeah, again, orange between cyan and red in the continuation zone. Yeah, fine. You'll get little moves in between when it dips down like this, but actually, this one's a bit worse, more interesting because where you have the cyan, the steel crossing of the orange, that becomes significant because it's that crossover that gives you an added momentum into things. And if that's able to cross both orange as well as cyan, then you would get a strong push from that. But theoretically, you would need to see that move above the red line on the extreme histogram. So it hasn't happened yet. Yeah, this 50K where my experimental adjustments working. Uh, yeah, this was all fine. Again, it's pretty clear here when you look at that. It's the dip below the orange, below green with the crossover above red as well. So flipping to the long side of it early from that perfectly in line. A shock there, but it's not going to last long because again, you already have steel plus 13.5, so it's effectively it coming from the bottom, which is bullish as well. But as soon as that gets back below, that's going to be retrace territory. From a 5K standpoint, starting to look at from Friday's action, you can see it was clearly down. And what you'll find in this paint bar is literally just identifying each one of these orange dip setups within rising MBI red, DOC red over white, and also MBI magenta, that being over white for the turnaround. And you can see it was pretty consistent with MBI white. But what you'll find here in looking at this, and it becomes rather clear, even from a 5K chart, is your pivots correspondingly matching with the intensities of moves. So where we ended up with the double pivot, you ended up boom, plateau, rise, but then fills it all back in. Likewise, again, right before the 50%, but fading right back through it. And that persisted most of the day. We had some pretty extreme runs to the negative side on that. It was all fairly clean and orderly. There was no real shocks to any of this. And if we look at what's happening right now, you can see things started shifting here a little bit earlier. We started getting a nice rise from DOC readings, staying above the negative 13.5, and strong dip of orange below. And those led to the pops. But you can see here's what I talk about when that steel pops above 13.5. You're right at the end of your bullish range. As soon as it dips back down, that's the beginning of it. That's your last bar. And sure enough, boom, you get orange over green, and the cascade lower begins. In this particular case, though, you're still looking pretty strong because green stayed pretty well over red in that nice strong cascade, and then we flipped the shakeout, moved to positive, and once that got to positive, you're in strong green territory from there. So that was pretty clean. What it looked like from the original paint bar. We can take a look at that. This is DO Con Paint 2A, so you can see from that short, carried it all the way through to the turnaround right back here. And nice and clean from that action. So it's a matter of just converting all those details into it and maintaining these long runs so that we don't have the fake little pops. And that's just about reading these moves that take place right around here at that 23%, the little breakout move above where you've got rising P2 pivots of the DOC red, and then recognizing how long they can last relative to this kind of situation where you end up with an orange that immediately comes right back above green, and you end up with the DOC spread. And as that expands, once you reach your peak expansion mode, that's usually when you start to think about getting a pop. And in this particular case, when it reached its peak mode, orange hadn't dipped below. It didn't happen until later, and so the momentum of that was lost. And so what you look for are your grand expansion periods, and then the contraction of it, and then the breakout again. And you just keep following that along. And where you end up starting to get your stronger one is see where it begins to narrow. And you've gone from your extreme expansion, bullish narrowing, and then boom, the crisscross until boom, right in here, you begin your short play. And then the real short is that orange cross above both cyan already above green as well at the same time, and steel crossing below. And then you can look at the spread. So last point of narrowing and then enlargement, and that's your short, boom, and you expect that to increase. And so the predictive modeling that is going on in there is making the assertion as to exactly how much expansion should occur, and then from that peak, evaluating where we're at as far as the additional changes and crossover. All these have relationships. You have your relationship of orange to green. You have red to green. You have red also to cyan, but even red to steel. And so all those interactions combine, and it's a matter of valuing them to create an index that really gives us an opportunity to really explore the intensity of a move. And so when you get in situations like this where you don't have a steel reset, but briefly right there takes place, so you know that a little bit of momentum is starting to expand, and then the stronger dip below the green gives you that real strength. And if you get more than one, it tends to be a little bit stronger from that pull. They faded it back, but rising red, pretty strong right there. And like we pointed out before, that rising shakeout and gold, of course. Um, you can put those on your list because every time you get the rising gold where shakeout's about to move into positive, tend to be nice runs. So all you're going to do is basically cause all the short cover from the end of the week to have accelerated, particularly when it comes to options and that they're going to have a pretty dramatic gamma situation. Those that got calls, they better get out of them, and then it'll flip around the other way. We'll get all sorts of activity that way just to help the dealers finalize everything. But you can see from a chaos standpoint here, we're at negative 13.5 on the steel in that. So that's a maximum move. So at that particular point, everything there from narrowing um, just brings it back, and you get an inversion of the relationship when you have cyan under red. So little things like that. And this is what we've always talked about the DOC from that standpoint being more of a circular rotation that basically, as those lines are going through, it's about the confluence of forces. Think if you have like a ping pong ball throwing, going through a liquid that's kind of spiraling in a tube. Uh, Kind of the best analogy I can think of for it. And it mimics itself within the MBI readings as well, where we get the understanding of the short spike there that led to the move to the zero. But once you got back down underneath, uh, magenta maintaining the strength of that on the rising yellow as well. Any short activity was just short covering. And you can see now we're well below the 10 point right there, and that is very bullish from that standpoint. A brief move of it right there, but it's going to be short lived. It's still somewhat within a bullish move. You get a dip here and most likely come back up again, and that will be the real test of where things go. But just a little bit more deeper understanding of what we're seeing from these setups, just so you get an idea of what the workings behind what you visually see are. And it's an interesting work. So, as always, anything relevant, I'll put on the team chat. Have a good one. Trade well.